Let's start with Queen of Katwe. How meaningful was it for you, just a couple of years after 12 Years a Slave, to be able to tell a story from your home continent in a way? This was a Ugandan story, not a Kenyan story, but how important was that for you?
Oh, it was so important. When I read the script, I was so delighted because it's a story that is of Uganda and it feels Ugandan, and it's from that perspective. I mean, I grew up watching a lot of foreign film. I mean, I watched a lot of American film and British and Mexican TV and, you know, Indian TV and film. And I watched everyone but ourselves. And when I did see ourselves on screen, it was nowhere in Africa, somewhere in Africa. I dreamed of Africa. It's, you know, and all these things, even the Constant Gardener, the Africans are the backdrop, and it is the foreigners that take the fore. And here was a story where the Africans were the story. And it was being told with dignity and cultural specificity, with a director who had lived in Uganda for so long and understood it. So there was no exotification, and though it's about poverty, it didn't feel like it was, it didn't feel condescending. It's really told from the perspectives of these people, and then it's a true story, and it's a hopeful story, and it's not an oh poor Africa story. I loved that about it, and then I got to play this tenacious woman that I got to meet before I played her, and I loved how hopeful and bright the story was.
And it was Mira Nair who directed it too, who you had been an intern on her film a decade before. Did you remind her of that?
Yes, I mean, the backstory, really, she knows. So how I got the internship, you see, you really need connections in life. I was at home, when I was in undergrad, and I was talking to my parents about, I'm interested in film, and my dad said, I don't know much about film, but I do have, one of my very good friends is married to a filmmaker. And I said, oh, really? And what's the filmmaker's name? He was like, Mira Nair. And I was like, what? you know Mira Nair's husband? Put me in touch. And so I got in touch. And that's how I got that internship, full disclosure. But from there, I mean, and she put me to work. I did not get any favoritism because I was her husband's friend's daughter. But, and then I went to Uganda the year after I interned for her, to be part of a film lab that she created called Maisha, and I was in the administrative team on that. And one of the participants of the film lab was a Kenyan, and he wrote a piece in which he wanted me to act in it. And so I was given permission to both do my job and act in this short film. And so that she knew from that I had interest in acting. But then, that happened, and then, complete silence. It didn't mean that I was automatically gonna be in her next film, I had to prove myself, and so I guess 12 years was that proof.
That helps, right. When you think back to Little Monsters, which, by the way, is on Hulu, for anyone who hasn't seen Little Monsters, it's available for you to watch on Hulu now. Is that the craziest movie you've ever been a part of? I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, it's mad. I loved it. My agent who's here, Hilda Queely, I don't know where you are, but I love you. She sent me the script and with a note saying, look, they've asked for you in this film. I don't know whether this is anything you'd be interested in, but I thought you should know that they've made an offer. And because I had expressed that I was interested in comedy, and I hadn't yet I hadn't yet read anything that made me laugh out loud. And then I read Little Monsters, and I was like, this person is crazy, you know? This person is smoking something cheap. And I want to drag. I was just so wild and like, but then at the heart of it, it had such heart as well. And the character, Miss Caroline, was like very Fraulein Maria, and I really love Fraulein Maria. So I was like, oh my God, this is my chance to play Fraulein Maria in a in a zombie apocalypse. Right. That sounds like something I should do with my life.
With lots of kids.
With lots of kids and animals, and Australian kids too. Right. I mean, it was amazing. I got to go to Australia, a part of the world I'd never been to, and then work with these incredible Australian artists. I mean, again, it was like, there is no minus here. This is all plus.
I also want to talk really briefly about, besides the movies that you've done, the movies that you didn't do. Because about 5 years ago, you made the conscious decision to go and act on Broadway in your friend Denai Guerrera's play Eclipsed. You got a Tony nomination for it, by the way. But that was a decision that meant turning down what I'm sure were some interesting or lucrative film opportunities. What was behind that decision?
Well, you know, with the Academy Award came a lot of change in my life. My kinesphere in the world had changed. I had gone from being completely anonymous to being very, very visible. I'd gone from taking the subway everywhere to somehow needing to take taxis. And my world was becoming, as much as it was becoming bigger, it was also becoming smaller. And with the Academy Award, you know, this is supposed to be like the thing that you achieve at the pinnacle of your career, and here I was having achieved it at the beginning. And I had spent a year and a half, like I'd done 12 years, and then I hadn't really acted in like a year and a half because I had been promoting it and everything. So getting off of that train, I realized, oh my gosh, I've spent all this time talking about myself, talking about my craft, and I'm totally not in touch with my craft. And what's the best place to re-engage? It's the theater. And so while I was working on Star Wars, another role that I took, because I felt like I needed that time away from my body. You know, I wanted to be I wanted to be invisibly visible, actually. And Maz gave that to me. Sure. And so while I was working on that, and I was contemplating going back on stage, and I had dinner with Emma Thompson, who I had met during award season, and I was nervous about going on stage because another thing that I'd heard over and over again is like, you gotta seize your moment. This is your moment. This is the time that you grab onto all the roles, all the roles you can, because this is your moment and it's finite. And Emma Thompson told me, you do exactly what your heart tells you to do. If you need to go on stage, you go on stage, because you're not living a moment, you're living your life, and you have to write the story of your own life. And the industry will be there when you get out. And so it was just such sound advice from a woman who herself had taken time away from work and gotten back to work, and she's just so fully in her skin, and I so admire her. So I took her advice.
Yes. I love that. Ray Fiennes, Emma Thompson, you have these great guardian angels.
Yes.
Well, let's take a look at a clip from a movie you did not too long after you came back to the movie industry, Black Panther. Here it is.